And now for a message from our sponsor, Harmony Biosciences. I'd like to introduce Kate McCandless, Senior Vice President of Corporate Affairs and Policy at Harmony Biosciences.
Hello, I'm Kate McCandless, Senior Vice President for Corporate Affairs and Policy at Harmony Biosciences. At Harmony, we believe that where empathy and innovation meet, a better life begins for people living with rare neurological diseases. That's because both empathy and innovation are integral to the life-improving treatments we explore. They are also integral to a better future for patients and their communities, for healthcare providers, and for all of us. We start by listening to those living with rare neurological diseases and what they share about their lives, the challenges they face, and what they hope for in the future. And then we use those insights to ensure that the treatments we investigate and develop have the potential to improve their lives in truly personal, relevant, and meaningful ways. I am pleased to be here today with Maria Piccone, the CEO of Trend Community, a digital health analytics company that she co-founded with her husband, Chris, after their daughter was born with a rare genetic disorder. Trend's technology analyzes social media conversations to understand the diseases from the patient and caregiver perspectives. Like Harmony, Trend believes that listening with empathy can lead to breakthroughs for people living with rare disorders. Thank you for being here with us today, Maria.
Thank you, Kate and Harmony Biosciences, for inviting us to share our insights on this very important topic.
Maria, Trend has continued to work through the pandemic to learn more about the needs of a wide range of rare disease communities. Can you tell us what communities have you engaged with, and what types of conversations are people living with rare disorders having about the impact that COVID-19 has had on themselves or their families?
Well, since we launched Trend in 2017, we've partnered with around 50 rare and chronic disease communities to analyze the stories and real-world experiences they share on social media in order to gain valuable insights into the challenges they face on a daily basis. These include rare neurodevelopmental disorders, such as GLUT1 deficiency syndrome, autoimmune inflammatory conditions like gout, and rare degenerative diseases such as Friedreich's ataxia. COVID-19 has had a profound impact on these communities, even beyond the struggles that we've all experienced. Some anecdotes really left an impression on me. Especially early in the pandemic, those with pre-existing conditions like a rare disorder heavily weighed the risks and benefits of even going to the hospital or the emergency room for care that they required. They were concerned that they might contract COVID while they were there. For example, the Fabry community faced challenges getting to infusion centers to receive enzyme replacement therapy. People also discussed medication shortages and not being able to fill vital prescriptions. And then once the vaccines became available, these community members discussed the pros and cons of getting vaccinated. For example, people living with chronic urticaria were fearful that the vaccines might trigger a relapse or exacerbate their hives.
Does the data give us any insights into how people living with rare disorders are disproportionately impacted by the pandemic? And how has this conversation shifted over time?
COVID-19 triggered or exacerbated the symptoms of several chronic diseases, making it even more difficult for communities to manage their pre-existing health conditions. To make things worse, patients must travel, sometimes incredibly long distances, to receive the medical care they require from specialists or centers of excellence that understand and are equipped to treat their conditions. Many of these centers closed, and of course, travel was not an option. And so many of these communities suffered profoundly because of this. Conversely, the ability to schedule telehealth visits positively impacted many for whom travel is always difficult, either due to physical limitations, cost, or because caregivers must make arrangements for someone to care for their other children while they accompany their medically fragile child to an appointment. Unfortunately, now those state of emergency telemedicine licenses are being revoked. And once again, people are weighing the pros and cons of traveling to get the care they need. We also saw an uptick in memberships as COVID-19 symptoms overlapped with these communities: pericarditis, PANS, PANDAS, chronic urticaria, to name a few.
So what decisions do people living with rare diseases say that they weigh when they're considering clinical trials? And how does the pandemic play into those decisions?
Yeah, good question. I think that one of the biggest considerations is travel. Most clinical trials require several visits. For the reasons I mentioned previously, this can be incredibly difficult for a family to pull off. Even when travel costs are covered, caregivers must make arrangements for someone to care for the other children in their family while they're away. Medication washout is definitely another consideration. For some, the meds that they are taking offer the only relief from their debilitating symptoms. And even if a new therapy shows promise for a brighter future, some patients don't want to sacrifice the benefits they get from their current treatments. And generally, there are multiple clinical trials running concurrently, and people must make the difficult decision to participate in one trial over another. We've observed a lot of misunderstanding and misconceptions around clinical trials in general, as well as specific protocols. The FDA has allowed some sponsors to modify their trials to make them more accessible, which of course we love. But now we see that these modifications and updates take time to make their way to the community. With an increase in televisits, which overall is a very positive thing, I do think we need to find better ways to communicate protocols and medication regimens more broadly. We found that steps can get missed or patients can leave confused when they don't have the opportunity to discuss their care face-to-face with their doctor.
So for those people that are enrolled in a trial, what important considerations are being shared in the rare disease communities?
The thing about social media is that information can spread wide and far very quickly. We've seen the negative side of this with the proliferation of misinformation, but it is also a vehicle to spread awareness and education. During this pandemic, we've all had a crash course in clinical trials and regulatory approvals. We're witnessing the lightning speed at which vaccines and treatments can be approved. The rare disease community paved the way for this and desperately wants these learnings to inform the next generation of clinical trials. For people already enrolled, I think the biggest consideration is that we are still living in a pandemic, and we want and need the accommodations that were made available. This includes televisits whenever possible, in-home visits when face-to-face care is required, and flexibility for patients to travel to the site that is most convenient to them, even if that means traveling a longer distance so that they can work with their current medical care team. Communities have also found their voice and are demanding to be heard by drug companies and regulatory agencies such as the FDA. We need to continue to find platforms to bring all stakeholders around the table to discuss the future of clinical trials. We, along with a diverse group of stakeholders, recently sat down with the FDA to discuss symptom-focused basket trials. These would be clinical trials that can enroll people with different rare disease diagnoses who experience the same or similar symptoms. The meeting left us hopeful that we will find a path towards more flexible and inclusive clinical trials, but also realistic. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done to get there. I hope that once the pandemic is behind us, that we will continue to focus our efforts on bringing treatments to the patients who need them as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Maria, for joining us today and for all that Trend Community does on behalf of the rare disease community. Clearly, there is more that we need to do and learn through this pandemic to continue to reach those who are living with rare diseases. On behalf of Harmony Biosciences, thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of the event.